The machines said I was unconscious. My family said they wished I wouldn't wake up. They were wrong on both counts, and that one mistake cost them everything. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Matt Harris. I'm 58 years old. I live in Naples, Florida, in a neighborhood called Pelican Bay. We had a 4-bedroom house on Creighton Road. Nice house. I built a mid-sized logistics company, Harris Supply Solutions, out of a 400-square-foot office on Miami Trail North back in 2001. By 2024, we had 47 employees, 3 warehouse contracts, and a revenue number that made my accountant smile every single quarter. I say had like it's past tense. We'll get to that. My wife, Sandra, 54, had been with me for 32 years. We've been married for 30. My son, Carl, 28, worked loosely in the business, which mostly meant he forwarded emails and attended the Christmas party. My daughter, Eva, 25, lived 20 minutes away in East Naples and called me every other Sunday, usually when she needed something. And Adrian Cooper, 35. Sandra had gotten pregnant by a high school boyfriend named Cooper. They never married, and though the guy hung around the fringes of Adrian's life, he was never a real father, couldn't hold a job, didn't pay a dime, and Sandra had sole legal custody. When I met Sandra, she was a 22-year-old single mother trying to raise a 4-year-old boy on her own, and I fell head over heels. We were young, broke, and desperately in love. We got married 2 years later. Right around the same time, I was risking everything to start Harris Supply Solutions. I raised Adrian from the time he was 6, treated him like my own flesh and blood, and because his biological father was still alive, we just never did formal adoption paperwork. He kept his last name, but I eventually made him my VP of operations. I trusted that man with everything. I mean that literally. I'll come back to all of them. It was a Tuesday in late August, when everything changed. I'd had a long meeting at the office, our Miami Trail location, 3rd floor, the one with the broken AC that I kept telling Carl to get fixed and he kept not fixing. The kind of thing that shouldn't matter but somehow always does in hindsight. I left around 9:40 p.m. I remember checking my phone at a red light on US 41. Sandra had texted, "Dinner's in the fridge." The last thing I remember is the green light turning, pulling into the intersection, and then nothing. A pickup truck ran the light doing about 55. Hit the driver's side dead on. The paramedics said I was lucky to be alive. They said my seatbelt saved me. They said a lot of things I wasn't awake to hear. I woke up, partially, 3 days later. And I wish I hadn't. Welcome to Dad's Raw Revenge. Hit that like button. Drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from. This story is going to take you somewhere. Here's the thing about being in a coma that nobody tells you. It's not like sleep. It's more like being locked in a room with no light and no door. You can hear sounds, voices, the beeping of machines, and almost everything happening around you. But you can't open your eyes. You can't move your hand. You're just there, trapped inside your own body, listening. Naples Community Hospital, ICU, 3rd floor. I know because I heard a nurse say it. The first voices I recognized were a doctor's and Sandra's. Day 3, I think. Mid-morning, judging by how loud the hallway was. "Mr. Harris is stable," the doctor said. "His brain activity is improving. We're cautiously optimistic, but he could be unconscious for another week, possibly 2. We'll continue monitoring." "And if he doesn't improve?" Sandra asked. Then we'd revisit the conversation about care options. What kind of options? That was Carl. He was there too. We could look at transferring him to a long-term acute care facility, and depending on how things progress, we'd discuss whether to pursue further aggressive intervention, ventilator support, resuscitation, that kind of thing. A pause, and then Sandra said it, calm as a woman ordering coffee. He always said he'd hate being kept alive by machines. If it comes to that, if his heart stops, I want to sign whatever order means you don't bring him back. The DNR, or whatever it's called. I felt my whole chest cave in. Did she just... He told us himself, Carl added quickly, almost like he'd rehearsed it, that if anything like this ever happens, he never wanted to be a burden. That's just who Dad is. I never said that. Not once in my life. How would anyone know this would happen to them? He's 58, Sandra continued. He's lived a full life. He cares so much about everyone else. He wouldn't want us suffering through this. 58 is a full life. She said that. My wife of 30 years looked a doctor in the eye and said 58 is a full life, like she was describing a houseplant that had run its course. I heard the distinct sharp click of a plastic pen cap. She signed the formal DNR papers right there at my bedside. I couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't do a single thing except lie there and listen. Don't react, don't move, just listen. That thought probably saved my life more than the seatbelt did. They came back that evening. All four of them this time. I heard the door open, heard the chair legs scrape across the floor, heard someone crack open a soda. I'm almost certain it was Carl, because of course it was. Eva spoke first. He looks the same. He's stable, Sandra said. Doctor thinks maybe another week. Another week. Eva sighed. Not a sad sigh. An inconvenient sigh. I have stuff going on, Mom. I can't keep driving out here every 2 days. Stuff going on. Your father is in the ICU, and you have stuff going on. Nobody's asking you to, Carl said. Ava stopped. He was never there for any of my stuff, so I don't know why I should rearrange my whole life for this. There it was. Ava, Sandra said softly. Not a warning, more like a reflex. I'm serious. Every school play, every graduation thing, he was always working. Always some meeting, some client, some deal. Now we're supposed to drop everything. She's not wrong about the work. She's not wrong. But I was building something. For them. For all of them. Adrian spoke for the first time. His voice was steady, measured, the way it always was in board meetings. He made it clear he didn't want to be a burden to anyone. I think we respect that. Exactly, Carl said. Then quieter. Besides, once the estate clears, the trust starts paying out. I looked at the folder in his study last year. I know what my share is. I'm 28. I've been waiting, Carl. Sandra cut him off. What? I'm just saying, not here. Silence. Once the estate clears, the trust starts paying out. I looked at the folder in his study last year. My son, my 28-year-old son, had been rifling through my private papers and had already penciled my death into his financial calendar. While I was lying 3 feet away, on a line item, my maturity date on a bond. I cannot describe what that feels like. I won't even try. Over the next 4 days, I heard things I will never unhear. I heard Carl on the phone. I think he stepped just inside the doorway, thought I was too far gone to matter. Telling someone, yeah, he's not waking up. Few more days, probably. Listen, can you look into some properties in Bonita Springs? I'll have liquidity soon. Liquidity. His father. Liquidity. I heard Eva tell Sandra she thought the Creighton Roadhouse was too big for just one person, and that Sandra should think about downsizing after. Just after. Like I was a seasonal event. I heard Adrian. Quiet, efficient Adrian. The man I promoted. The man I took to Dolphins games. The man I lent $20,000 to in 2019, because family helps family. I heard him tell Sandra, and I'm quoting directly, the sooner we settle the estate, the cleaner this is. I can manage the transition at Harris Supply. I know where everything is. I bet you do, Adrian. I didn't know yet what I meant by that. Not fully, but something cold settled in my gut and just stayed there. Sandra said, let's not rush. Adrian said, of course. I just want to be ready. Of course you do. Day 7. August. Naples heat even through the hospital walls. I opened my eyes. The nurse screamed, in a good way, I think. She called for the doctor. There was noise, light, the sudden chaos of people who weren't expecting to celebrate. The doctor came in, ran his checks, started asking me questions. What year is it? Who's the president? Can you squeeze my hand? I answered every one. And when Sandra walked through that door 20 minutes later, her face did something complicated. There was relief in it. I want to be fair. There was. But underneath that, something else flickered. Something that disappeared so fast I almost convinced myself I imagined it. Almost. She hugged me. She cried. She said, I was so scared. I held her back. I said, I know. I'm so lucky to have you. Every single word out of my mouth was a lie, and for the first time in 30 years of marriage I was completely okay with that. They sent me home the next day. Carl held the car door open. Eva brought flowers, yellow ones which I've always hated. But sure. Adrian shook my hand and said, welcome back, Matt. We were worried sick. I smiled at every single one of them. Welcome back. Oh, I was back all right. And I had absolutely nothing but time. Stay with me. Because what I found when I started looking, that was so much worse than anything I heard in that hospital room. And trust me, that bar was already underground. There's a specific kind of quiet that settles over a man who knows something nobody knows he knows. I lived in that quiet place for 4 weeks. Coming home from Naples Community Hospital felt like walking back onto a stage mid-performance. Everyone knew their lines. Everyone had their marks. And I, the man who was supposed to be dead, had somehow wandered back into a play I wasn't written into anymore. Sandra fussed over pillows. Carl carried my bag inside. Eva had stocked the fridge. She actually went grocery shopping for me, which in 25 years of her life I could count on 0 hands. Adrian stood in the doorway of my own house on Creighton Road and said, "We've got everything handled at the office, Matt. Don't even think about work." "Thank you, son," I said. Son. The word tasted like ash, but I smiled. I sat down in my own chair. I accepted the soup Sandra made, and I played the most important role of my career, a tired, grateful, slightly confused 58-year-old man who just wanted to recover. I was none of those things. Week 2, I told everyone I was still dizzy, still getting headaches, still not quite sharp enough for the office. Sandra believed it immediately, which told me everything about how much she'd been paying attention to me these past few years. Carl nodded sympathetically and went back to whatever Carl did all day, which from what I could tell involved a lot of golf and very little work. Eva checked in by text every 3 days. Adrian said, "Take all the time you need, Matt. I've got the office." "I'm sure you do, Adrian." The first call I made was to a lawyer. Not our family lawyer. Not Tom Briggs over on 5th Avenue South who'd been handling our documents for 15 years, and who I suddenly realized Sandra had probably had lunch with recently. No, I needed someone clean, someone new. I found him through a referral from an old college buddy. His name was Ray Bennett, mid-50s, office in North Naples off Immokalee Road, the kind of lawyer who doesn't have a fancy waiting room because he doesn't need one. He had a handshake that meant something, and eyes that didn't flinch. I sat across from him and said, "I need to know if my family is stealing from me, and I need you to assume the answer is yes." Ray didn't blink. "Then let's find out." That was the beginning. The second call was to a private investigator named Frank Dolan. Frank worked out of a small office in Golden Gate, drove a forgettable gray sedan, and had 20 years of experience that showed in the way he listened. Completely still, no reactions, just absorbing everything. I told him about the hospital. I told him about Carl and the properties in Bonita Springs. I told him about Adrian's "I know where everything is." I told him about Sandra's voice when she told the doctor not to revive me. Frank wrote everything down. Then he looked up and said, "How long you been married?" 30 years. Frank just nodded slowly and wrote something down. Week 3. And this is where it gets ugly. Ray called me on a Thursday morning while Sandra was at the gym. "Matt," he said, "I need you to come in, and I need you to be sitting down when I show you this." I drove myself for the first time since the accident. Took Creighton Road to US 41, same route I'd driven 1,000 times. Parked behind Ray's building. Walked in. He had a folder on his desk roughly the thickness of a small novel. "Your VP of Operations," Ray said, "has been moving money out of Harris Supply Solutions for approximately 3 years. The number was $500,000. $500,000. Siphoned slowly, carefully, through a combination of inflated vendor invoices, ghost expense accounts, and transfers routed through a shell account Adrian had set up under a company called Cooper Logistics LLC, registered in Delaware, invisible unless you knew to look." "He's your stepson?" Ray asked. "Yes." His reasoning, and this is documented in some internal communications we recovered, is that he was, quote, securing himself in case the will didn't include him, because he's not your biological son. I sat with that for a long moment. He did it because he was afraid I wouldn't take care of him. I had paid for that man's apartment when he was 24. I had promoted him over people with twice his experience. I had taken him to Dolphins games, to client dinners, to the Keys for a fishing weekend in 2021. I told him to his face, more than once, "Your family, Adrian, you don't have to worry." And he robbed me anyway. "There's more," Ray said. Of course there was. Sandra Harris co-signed on 11 of these transactions. She has signing authority on the business accounts. Some of these couldn't have moved without her approval. Sandra knew. My wife didn't just stand at a hospital bed and tell a doctor to let me die. She had been signing off on her son stealing from our company, from the company I built. I didn't cry. I want to be clear about that. I sat in Ray Bennett's office on Immokalee Road in Naples, Florida, and I felt something I can only describe as a door closing, quietly, firmly. Click. "The properties," I said. "Tell me about the properties." Ray opened to another section of the folder. Months before the accident, Sandra helping him every step of the way, Adrian had prepared a forged power of attorney document bearing Sandra's real signature and a forged version of mine. Right after the crash, the moment it looked like I wasn't leaving the ICU, he moved quickly. He used that fake POA to file a fraudulent quitclaim deed at the county clerk's office. He had forced his name onto the titles as a co-owner on both the Creighton Road house and the Harris Supply Warehouse on the trail. He moved quickly, Ray said. He had this ready. He was waiting for the right moment. Can we reverse it? Yes. Our documents analyst has already confirmed the signature on the POA is a forgery. The handwriting analysis is airtight. I've prepared the lawsuit to freeze both properties and strip his name from the deeds entirely. He paused. But Matt, the moment we file, Adrian gets served. He'll know everything. Then we don't file yet. Ray looked at me. When? I thought about Sandra mentioning the anniversary dinner. Everyone in the same room, all of them smiling at me across the table. Monday morning, I said. After the party. Ray nodded slowly. Then Adrian walks into Saturday night thinking he owns half your house. That's exactly right. Frank Dolan called 2 days later. I was sitting on my back porch, watching the water in our small backyard canal go nowhere, when my phone buzzed. You want to know about the affair? Frank said. Tell me. His name is Scott Wheeler, 34. Certified personal trainer at Naples Fitness on Pine Ridge. Your wife has been seeing him for 14 months. Pause. It's not casual, Matt. 14 months. I did the math without meaning to. 14 months ago, Sandra and I had gone to a New Year's Eve party at a neighbor's house on Pelican Bay. She'd worn a blue dress. We'd danced to something forgettable. She'd kissed me at midnight and said, "This is going to be a good year." 2 weeks later, she started training with Scott Wheeler. I put the phone down on the armrest, stared at the canal. 30 years. Not 30 bad years either. Even though we had our challenges and rough times, we had good years. Real ones. I wasn't some checked-out husband who forgot her birthday and worked through Christmas. I mean, I worked hard, yes, and maybe more than I should have. But I showed up. I paid for everything. I built the life she was now distributing among her children and her gym instructor. I stared at the water. My hands were shaking. A cold, violent wave of nausea hit me so hard I had to grip the porch railing just to stay upright. I wanted to scream until my lungs burned. I wanted to walk inside and smash every plate in the kitchen. But I forced my breath down. I closed my eyes until the shaking stopped. If I broke now, they wouldn't just get my money, they'd win. Keep moving, Matt. There was one more piece I needed. I reached out to an employee named Glenn Ferris. Glenn was 44, sharp as a tack. He's been working in our accounts department for 6 years before Carl, in one of his rare exercises of actual authority, had him demoted over a personality conflict, meaning Carl didn't like being corrected and Glenn had the nerve to do it twice. Glenn agreed to meet me at a coffee shop on 3rd Street South in downtown Naples. He showed up 5 minutes early, ordered a black coffee, and when I walked in, he looked at me like a man who'd been waiting a long time to have a very specific conversation. I knew something was wrong with those vendor accounts, he said before I even sat down. I flagged it twice. Carl told me I was overstepping, but it wasn't Carl running it. It was Adrian. And your daughter, Eva. I paused, a coffee cup halfway to my mouth. Eva. Adrian was routing the cash through Cooper Logistics LLC, Glenn said, sliding a thumb drive across the table. But look at the secondary payouts. Adrian was cutting monthly checks directly to Ava's design boutique. It was a kickoff. She discovered what her mother and Adrian were doing a year ago, and instead of telling you, she demanded a cut to keep her mouth shut. She's been funding her entire life with your stolen revenue. Glenn became my inside man over the next 10 days. He had records, personal backups he'd kept, because Glenn was exactly that kind of thorough. That helped us reconstruct the fraud timeline with surgical precision. Dates, amounts, approvals, the whole chain. Every transaction that Adrian moved and Sandra approved, documented and cross-referenced. $500,000. 3 years. 43 separate transactions. All while I was driving home late from Tamiami Trail, thinking I was building something for my family. I was. Turns out I was building it for them to take. By the end of week 4, here's what I had. Sandra, affair with Scott Wheeler, 14 months. Co-signed on Adrian's fraud. Helped forge the power of attorney. Told the doctor not to revive me. Adrian, $500,000 stolen over 3 years. Forged POA, put his name on 2 of my properties. Told the doctor I didn't want to be revived. Carl didn't know about the affair or the fraud, but sat in my ICU room and talked about liquidity and Bonita Springs properties. Wanted the trust fund. Told the doctor his dad didn't want to be a burden. Eva knew about the fraud, demanded a monthly kickoff to stay quiet, and lied straight to the doctor's face. Ray had the property lawsuit locked and loaded, sitting in a drawer ready to be filed Monday morning. Adrian had no idea. As far as he was concerned, he co-owned my house and my warehouse, and I was home eating soup and watching TV. Let him keep thinking that. He had about 6 days left to enjoy it. I cleaned out our joint personal savings account. $800,000, Sandra thought I never looked at. The account where I'd been parking my corporate distributions for years, and moved every cent to an individual account at a completely different bank. Completely legal. My money, my signature, my name on the distributions that had built that balance in the first place. I also had a new will drawn up. The old one was generous. The new one was educational. Here's what I want you to understand. I'm not a vindictive man by nature. I'm a logistics guy. I like things organized, sequential, efficient. I like problems solved cleanly with minimum waste. What I was planning wasn't revenge in the Hollywood sense. It wasn't rage. It was logistics. And I had one final delivery to make. Our 30th wedding anniversary was 6 days out. Sandra had already mentioned, cheerfully over dinner one night while I smiled across the table at the woman who'd signed my company's money over to her son, that we should do something special. Absolutely, I said. Let's invite everyone. Make it a real celebration. She smiled, reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I squeezed back. Every single one of them was going to be in the same room, and they were all going to get exactly what they deserved. If you have been listening for a while, drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button while you're at it, and be sure you're subscribed. Nobody throws a party for a dead man walking. But that's exactly what my family did. Sandra planned the whole thing herself. Invitations went out to 14 neighbors from Pelican Bay. A few couples we'd known for years. The Hendersons from down on Creighton Road. Our pastor from Grace Community Church off Goodlet Frank Road. She ordered catering from a place on 5th Avenue South. The good stuff, not plastic trays from a grocery store. She rented tall cocktail tables with white linen. She bought a banner. 30 years. The Harris family. I saw it rolled up on the kitchen counter 3 days before the party, and stood there staring at it for a solid 10 seconds. The Harris family. Sure. Let's celebrate that. The party was on a Saturday evening in late October. The kind of Naples night where the heat finally backs off around 7 p.m., and you can actually stand outside without feeling like you're being slowly cooked. Our backyard on Creighton Road was strung with lights. The canal behind the house caught the reflection and turned it into something that looked almost peaceful. Almost. Carl showed up first, dressed like he was at a resort, which was Carl's default setting. He clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Looking good, Dad. You really bounced back." "Feeling great," I said. "Best I've felt in years, honestly." He had no idea how true that was. Eva came in behind him, hugged Sandra, handed me a card. I opened it right there. Inside she'd written, "Dad, so glad you're still here. Love you." I looked at her handwriting for a moment. I thought about a little girl who used to fall asleep in the car on the way home from school. Thought about where that girl went. "Thank you, sweetheart," I said. Adrian arrived last, because Adrian always arrived last. He thought it made him look important. He was wearing a blazer. He shook my hand with both of his, the way he always did when he was performing warmth rather than feeling it, and said, 30 years, Matt. That's something." "It really is," I said. "Hey, I've got something for everyone tonight. A little gift." Adrian smiled. "Yeah, what kind of gift?" "The life-changing kind." He laughed like that was a joke. It wasn't. By 8 p.m. the backyard was full. Neighbors were laughing, glasses were clinking. Sandra was moving through the crowd in a green dress looking like a woman without a single secret. Carl was on his second bourbon. Eva was talking to someone near the canal. Adrian was networking, actually networking, at my anniversary party, because that's who he was. Ray Bennett was parked on the street out front, sitting in his car with a folder on the passenger seat. Frank Dolan had made a phone call earlier that afternoon on my behalf. 2 Collier County Sheriff's deputies were waiting in an unmarked car. 2 houses down. Everything was in position. I walked to the center of the patio, picked up a fork, and tapped my glass. "Can I get everyone's attention?" The yard went quiet. Sandra looked over and smiled. That warm public smile she wore like jewelry. Carl raised his glass. Eva turned around. Adrian crossed his arms and watched. 14 neighbors. My pastor. My family. An audience. Perfect. 30 years, I started. 30 years is a long time. You go through a lot together. You build something. You sacrifice. You make choices every day that you hope, you trust, are worth it. People nodded. Someone said, "That's right." Merely dying has a way of clarifying things, I continued. When I was lying in that hospital bed at Maples Community, I had nothing to do but listen and think and remember. Sandra tilted her head slightly. The smile stayed, but something shifted behind her eyes. There it is. She just felt the temperature change. I heard things in that room that I'll never forget, things that changed me. And tonight, on our 30th anniversary, in front of everyone who's watched us build this life, I want to share what I learned. I reached down to the table beside me. 4 envelopes, each one with a name written on the front in my own handwriting. The yard was completely silent now. Carl. My son stepped forward, bourbon still in hand, with the vague smile of a man expecting a check. I handed him the envelope. He opened it, read it. The smile didn't disappear all at once. It sort of drained slowly, like water leaving a bathtub. Inside was a single printed transcript, every word he'd said in that ICU room. The liquidity comment. The Bonita Springs properties. Once the estate clears, the trust starts paying out. I looked at the folder in his study. I know what my share is. Beneath the transcript, a letter from Harris Supply Solutions HR, dated that Friday. Carl, you're fired from Harris Supply, effective immediately. Your corporate gas card is canceled as of midnight tonight. The lease on your car that the company's been covering. That's done too. I let that settle. And if you're wondering about the future, my new will leaves you exactly $1,000. Don't worry, you can use it for liquidity. The word landed like I intended it to. Dad, I'm not finished. Eva, she walked over slowly, arms already crossed. She took the envelope like it might bite her. Inside, same transcript, her section highlighted. He was never there for me. He was always working. Why should I care? And then the thing that I think hit her harder than anything else. A photograph, printed on plain paper. Hospital security footage timestamp. 4:47 p.m., day 3. The exact moment she told the doctor her father was suffering and should be let go. Eva looked at the photo. Looked at me. Dad, I didn't mean... Eva, my voice was steady. You meant every word. And you knew about the money. I let that land. You knew and you said nothing. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. My name comes off your apartment lease cosign as of Monday morning. You've got 30 days to find a new cosigner, a roommate or a cheaper place to live. I paused. And same as your brother. $1,000 in the new will. Spend it wisely. Sandra. The party was a statue. Nobody moved. Nobody touched their drink. The Hendersons from down the road were staring at the ground like they were trying to disappear into it. Our pastor looked like a man regretting every life decision that led him to this backyard. Sandra Lyons set down her glass very carefully. She walked over and took her envelope with both hands. Opened it. Inside, Frank Dolan's surveillance report. 14 months of dates and locations. Scott Wheeler. Naples Fitness on Pine Ridge. The hotel off Airport Pulling Road they used on Tuesday afternoons while I was running a company that she was simultaneously cheating and helping her son rob. Beneath that, Ray's documentation. Her signatures on 11 fraudulent transactions. The forged power of attorney. Her handwriting next to mine, except mine was a forgery and everyone in that room was about to know it. And beneath all of that, divorce papers, already filed, already processed. She went pale. Not red, not tearful. Pale. The kind of pale that means your body is having a conversation with reality that your brain hasn't caught up with yet. 30 years, I said quietly. And you couldn't wait 7 days. Matt, please. She looked at the neighbors, at the banner above our heads. 30 years, the Harris family. You told the doctor I was 58, and that was a natural time to die. I wasn't shouting. I want to be clear. I never raised my voice once that entire night. I didn't need to. You signed documents that stole $500,000 from the company I built. You helped put another man's name on my house while I was unconscious. I paused. My lawyers filed the divorce papers on Friday. Because of the $500,000 your son stole with your signature on it. My settlement offer is the deed to that old crumbling duplex we bought in Immokalee back in 2003. You can live there, or you can go to court and let a judge spend his morning looking at your fraud timeline. Your choice. Sandra Harris stood in her green dress in the backyard she'd decorated herself, surrounded by every person in her social world, and had absolutely nothing to say. Adrian. He hadn't moved from his spot near the edge of the patio. He was very still. The blazer suddenly looked like a costume. I didn't hand Adrian an envelope. I just looked at him. Your biological father couldn't be bothered to raise you, leaving your mother with sole custody and nothing to her name, I said. I married her when you were just a 6-year-old kid, and I gave you a real home, a father's love, and eventually the keys to my company. I promoted you. I lent you money. I called you son. My voice stayed level, but something underneath it could have cut glass. And for 3 years you stole from me. $500,000. 43 transactions. And when I survived, you were annoyed. Adrian's jaw tightened. Matt, whatever you think you have, I don't think anything. I know. Ray filed the criminal complaint for identity theft and deed forgery with the Collier County Sheriff's Office yesterday morning, I said. The warrant was signed at noon today. I looked toward the side of the house. Come on in. 2 deputies in plain clothes walked through the gate. The yard made a sound I can't fully describe. A collective intake of breath. Someone knocked over a glass. Carl took a step backward like he could physically distance himself from what was happening. One of the deputies said, Adrian Cooper? Adrian looked at me one last time. Something in his face cracked. Not remorse. Not quite. More like the specific devastation of a man who gambled everything on a man staying dead. You loved me like a son, Adrian said. Low. Almost a whisper. But it didn't feel like it, he added. I did, I said. That part was real. They walked him out through the side gate. The backyard watched in total silence. Sandra had her hand over her mouth. Carl was staring at his shoes. Eva was crying, real tears. Finally, though I couldn't tell you exactly what they were for. I picked up my glass from the table, looked around at the neighbors. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, I said. I mean that genuinely. You should eat. The food's excellent. I picked the place myself. A few stunned faces. As for me, I drained the glass, set it down clean. I'm 58 years old. I've got 30 good years left minimum. I've got a company that's still standing, a foundation in my mother's name. And for the first time in a long time, I buttoned my jacket. Not a single person in my life who doesn't deserve to be there. I walked through the house, out the front door, into the warm Naples night. My car was packed, had been since Thursday. I pulled out of Creighton Road for the last time, turned onto US 41 and headed north. My phone buzzed once on the seat beside me. Sandra. I didn't answer. 3 minutes later I pulled over, typed one text, and sent it. I heard every word. Then I put the phone in the glove box, rolled the windows down, and drove. They wanted me dead. Instead, I gave them something worse. The truth. In front of everyone. You wanted the inheritance? You got exactly what you earned. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Let me know where you're watching from. I will see you on the next one.